Okay, what we're going to talk about today in section 13.3 is truth in lending. And we're going to talk about things like how to figure out annual percentage rates and how to calculate unearned interest if you pay off your loans early. So the Consumer Credit Protection Act in 1968 was also known as the Truth in Lending Act. And two major things that they addressed in this was, first of all, how can I tell if my lender is actually charging the accurate rate? And then how much finance charge am I entitled to if I decide to pay off the loan sooner? We wanted to prevent a lender from saying, you agreed to a 4-year loan and you owe us this money. They had to figure out ways to make sure that the consumer didn't end up paying for a loan when they paid it off early. So we deal with an annual percentage rate, usually referred to as an APR. The annual percentage rate has to be disclosed at the time that you get the loan, and it has to be in writing, and it has to be stated whether you ask for it or not. So if they refuse to give you that information or that's not in writing, then they are not abiding by the Truth in Lending Act. If you look on page 707 in your book, there is an APR table that talks about like how many months that you're going to have the loan for, um, or how many monthly payments, and percentage rate listed, and how much finance charge you can be expected to pay per $100. So that chart you're going to need to look at and you need to have a copy of, and I'm going to try and get it out on Blackboard for y'all to have in your notes. So N is the number of scheduled monthly payments, and H is the finance charge per 100. So you've got to know that. Remember that. So find the annual percentage rate for a $2,400 2-year add-on interest loan that has a finance charge of $288. So what you need to do is we're going to go through this formula, and we're going to take the finance charge, which is $288. We're going to divide it by the amount financed. So this formula is important. You need to keep this handy. Divided by the amount financed and multiplied by 100. And that gives us the number 12. Now we're going to look in the chart, and since we're talking about a 2-year, which is 24 months, what we're going to do is we're going to go across the 24-month column and look for the number closest to 12. And when we look for the number closest to 12, we find the numbers 11.86, and we find the number 12.42. And so we have to decide which one's closer to 12, and the 11.86 is closer to 12. So at that point, you go up to the top of the column, and you should see 11%. So the annual percentage rate is 11%. So let's talk about what we found again. I know that I'm borrowing $2,400. I know it's for 2 years, and I know that the finance charge is going to be $288. But I want to make sure that, knowing that information, that I'm being charged the percentage rate that the bank agreed to. So I can do this calculation. I come up with the 12. I look at my annual percentage rate chart. I find the number closest to 12 in the 24-month row on page 707. And then I look and find the percentage rate that is given to me at the top of the page, which is 11%. Now, if the bank had told me that I was going to be paying 10% or some other percentage, then I could consult the bank and find out why, according to my calculations, why my percentage rate is coming out different. Okay, so let's look at another one. John is financing a $1,990 computer with 24 monthly payments of $91.50 each. Now this time I don't know the finance charge, so I have to calculate the finance charge. So to do that, it's $91.50 each for 24 months, which is $2,196, minus the $1,990 that I borrowed is $206 in finance charge. Now I can go to my chart, I can go to my formula and do finance charge divided by amount financed times 100, and I get 10.35. Now when I look at my chart, I want to find 10.35. Again, the loan was for 24 months. I'm going to look on the 24-month row and find the number closest to 10.35, which is 10.19. And when I look up at the percentage rate for that, I find out that it's 9.5%. So what do we do when a loan is paid off early? If the loan's paid off early, then we need to get paid back, or we need to know how much unearned interest there is. And I need to be able to get some money back, or I need to be able to change my last payment or something like that. There's two different methods that they use. There's the actual method, and then there's the Rule of 78 method. Now, always there is that possibility that your lender could say that there is a penalty for an early withdrawal or an early payment, and they could end up not letting you get your money back. But these are the two possibilities. So the first one is called an actual method, and some of the variables you'll see here in this formula, and this is again another formula that's very, very important. Some of the variables, excuse me, that you see here are K, little k, and that is how many payments are remaining. So if it's a 24-month loan and you paid it off after 1 year, there were 12 payments left. If it's a 48-month loan and you paid it off after 2 years, there's 24 payments left. R is what your regular monthly payment is normally. H is the finance charge per $100 that you have to get out of the chart on page 707 again. So we're going to look at an example, and then U would be the unearned interest. Okay, so the payoff amount, once I know what the unearned interest is, the payoff amount is how much I would need to pay off the loan. And so we're going to use this formula again. K is the number of payments scheduled after the current one. In other words, how many payments were left. R is the monthly payment, and U is the unearned interest. So here we have an example. Suppose you have a loan for 4 years. And again, 4 years, just to keep in mind, is 48 months. Monthly payments are $185. Annual percentage rate is 9%. The original finance charge calculated was $1,426. What if I decided to pay it off in 3 years rather than 4 years? What is the unearned interest? So let's start with that. Unearned interest is the formula U equals K times R, H over 100 plus H. K is the number of payments that are remaining. So if it's 3 years and I have one more year left, then K would be 12. R is our monthly payment. Our monthly payment is $185. H is the value out of the chart. So we're going to look at 24 months on the chart. We're going to look at 24 months. No, I said that wrong. We're going to look at 12 months on the chart because there's one more year left. So we're going to look at 12 months on the chart, and H comes out to be 4.94. Again, H is, when you look at H, you look at for the number of months remaining. That's how you find H. So we're looking at the 12-month column in the chart under the 9% interest rate. Okay? So when we do this calculation and we plug all that information into our formula, and here's just the information again. H is 4.94, R is 185, K is 12. When we do that calculation, we get $104.51. So that is telling us that we're going to, um, the bank, if you want to think of it this way, is not going to earn that interest. They aren't going to get that money. $104.51 is the amount of finance charge or the amount of interest that the bank will not get. So it's unearned interest for the bank, okay, if you think of it as a loan. So the payoff amount, we're going to take that formula for payoff amount, and again, K is how many months are left, and R is your monthly payment. So there are 12 months left at $185 minus the 104 that they don't get, and so the payoff amount is $2,349. So what that means is that I borrowed, well, they didn't actually tell you how much you borrowed. You borrowed a certain amount of money, you paid it off early, and so the payoff amount, how much do you have to, how much is left on the loan will be $2,300.49. Okay, so then the other method of calculating this is called the rule of 78. And the rule of 78 is just a different formula to calculate a similar thing. It doesn't use that actual method, it just uses a different method. So in this case, K is still the remaining number of payments that are scheduled. N is the original number of payments scheduled, and F is the amount of finance charge originally planned. So basically what you're doing is you're figuring out what fraction of the payments have you not made, and then you're dividing that finance charge by an equal amount of, okay? So let's look at this. Use the rule of 78 to compute the same problem. So the same problem, K would be 12 because we have 12 payments left. N would be 48 because there were 48 payments originally scheduled. And F, the finance charge, is $1,426. So if we plug that information into our formula, we get $94.58 of unearned interest. Now, if you look at this, with the actual method, the unearned interest was $104.51. And with this method, the unearned interest is $94.58. So this method actually benefits the bank a little bit more because they get a little bit more money. I'm sorry, yeah, I'm saying that right. They get a little bit more money from you because there's only $94 that they're going to give you back, as opposed to the other method was going to give you $104 back. Okay, so now what we're trying to do is calculate the finance charge. So in a closed-end loan, there are N equal monthly payments, and the annual percentage rate denotes the true annual interest rate for the loan. Then H is the finance charge per $100 financed, given by this formula. So this is a very complicated formula if you look at this. Okay, N again is the number of monthly payments. APR is the annual percentage rate, again, that you would have to have. You either are given that information or look at a chart. And that's really all you're using in this formula. So it looks very complicated, but let's go through an example. The loan states the annual percentage rate of 10%, stipulates 30 payments of $125.40 each. If the loan is paid off on the 18th payment, find the finance charge per $100 financed. So let's look at this. So if we look at this problem, N is 12. Okay. Now, N is the equal monthly payments, and the reason that it is 12 is because we're paying it off early. We're paying it off on the 18th payment. So I got this by doing 30 minus 18, which is 12. Okay, so again, um, what they're looking at is how many payments are remaining. How many payments are remaining? We made 18 payments. There were 12 remaining, so that's what N represents. How many equal payments are remaining? The other value that we need is the APR, and the APR was given to us as 10% or 0.10. Okay, so plugging that information into our formula, 12 is N, 0.10, pay attention here that there's a decimal point there, that's not a mistake, 0.10, 12, $100. The APR again is 0.10, 12, and you'll notice right here N this is a negative 12. So this is very, very important when you're putting in your calculator. So when you put this in your calculator, you're going to have to do 1 plus 0.10 divided by 12, and notice I put parentheses, and get that answer and raise it, use the caret symbol to raise it to the negative 12 power. And you should get a number for this that it's about 0.9052124274298. Now what I found is that if you do not keep the majority of these decimal points, then your answer is going to be significantly off of what the answer on the next slide is. So you need to keep as many decimal points as possible. So now over here we still haven't done the 1 minus. So we need to come back over here and do 1 minus this 0.90521271298. We need to subtract those two values. And when you do that, you get a number that's 0.0947875702. So the denominator of this fraction, this whole piece right here, is 0.0978757702. The numerator, when I do all of this calculation and multiply all that together, I get 10. So 10 divided by 0.0947875702, and then I do the minus 100, comes out to be 5.50. So that's telling you that finance charge per $100 is coming out to be 5.50. And again, be very, very careful about your rounding. Be very, very careful about your rounding. So what this answer is telling you is that you're paying $5.05 per $100 of borrowed money, based on the fact that you paid the loan off early. So that amount should be smaller than what you originally had planned on paying per month for that loan. If you look in the chart for 30 months at 10%, 30 months at 10% was supposed to be 13.43 per $100, and so you ended up significantly cutting the percentage rate that you ended up paying, or the amount of finance charge that you pay, almost in half, a little bit more than in half, by paying the loan off early. So it's something very, very important to think about. You know, paying off the loan early is to your benefit in many, many ways. 12 months doesn't seem like maybe a long or very early payment method, or paying it off very early, but it is significantly cheaper to do that. So when you're looking at loans and things like that, making that little bit of extra payment each month is always a very, very good idea, because you can cut your monthly payment significantly. All right, I hope you have a great week, and keep in touch with me about any problems that you might be having. Talk to you later.